Alrighty, hello. How's it going, Chase?
I'm pretty good. How about you?
Oh, doing wonderful. I'm so excited to have a chance to be able to sit down and talk with you and get started on pushing in the direction of talking to musicians as well.
Right.
And I appreciate greatly you being willing to do this, and especially in this building period of the channel where there's nothing that I can offer you. So it means a lot to me.
Yeah, no problem. I'm glad that I could be a part of it, I guess.
It really it's everything. Thank you so much. Now, as far as your art goes, when you sent me Vixilia, I wasn't expecting anything nearly as polished and quality as I had gotten. You know, like that track is just so amazing, and it goes through a whole roller coaster of different sounds and different melodies, and it's beautiful. And
thank you.
What was your inspiration for that? What dug the seed in for that song?
So that that first like little piano pattern you hear in the very beginning?
Yeah.
I came up with that like 3 months before I ever started writing the song. And I tried like many times to turn that into a song, and it never really worked out. And then me and my friends got together, and we thought it'd be a fun idea to like start a band. It never ended up working out, but we settled on the name Vixilia because we thought it sounded really cool. And it's not even a real word. Yeah, it's not. It's not a
very
word.
Cool.
But we were just like, yeah, that's cool. We should call it band Vixilia. And then like 2 weeks later, it flopped. And then I'm just like, okay, well, this is a really cool word. And I just had the idea of making this really, really long song that goes through a lot of different genres and styles and emotions. And yeah.
Nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. That is such a good track, and I've listened to it a few times since you sent it to me. And hopefully we can get it featured in here so everybody who listens to this can also check it out, because it's absolutely beautiful, and I'm just stunned by the quality of your work.
Thank you, man.
It's a robbery that you only have 200 some odd subs. I mean, it's more than I have, which is great for you, man. Absolutely amazing. But you deserve to be known. That is so good.
Thanks.
So, how'd you get started in music?
It depends on what you mean by started in music. Because I would say...
started your drive, specifically? Like, what pushed you to start making little tunes, do you think? Was it just like a boredom thing, or was there a specific inspiration that you can think of?
I think, like, when I was finally at the age where I could have a mind of my own and make decisions, I wanted to do music. Because that's the age I started beatboxing. At, like, 3 and 4-ish. I was already listening to a lot of music. My dad played a lot of metal bands in his truck. So that was kind of the first music I ever really heard. And I would just beatbox the songs that he would play back to me. And I guess that's what started all of it. My neighbors also had a drum set and a piano in their house. And I would go and I would mess around on those. And eventually, in 2nd grade, I got a guitar. I ended up selling it because I didn't have the drive to learn it. But that was that. I tried to start a band. That didn't work. So there's been 2 times I've tried to start a band and it just flops. Which is fine. That's how life goes, you know?
Maybe it's just not time for it. I mean, who knows? Don't give up that drive to start just because you've had a couple of failures. I mean, you've definitely probably taken some lessons away from those, I would assume.
Right, yeah. And then I guess the thing that really pushed me was getting into like EDM and dubstep, because that kind of music fascinated me. I think the first time I ever really liked electronic music was when I watched Tron Legacy, and the soundtrack in that movie was like fascinating.
Oh, the Daft Punk soundtrack?
Yeah, it's so good, dude.
So good.
I love that. And I'm like, who are these people? you know?
Maybe like 10 albums ever I've
Mm-hmm.
purchased physical copies of. I have so many that I've purchased online, but that's one of the 10 that I
Right.
got a physical CD for because I loved it so much.
And I'm like, there's these cool dudes with like robot costumes on. And then I like heard about Skrillex and Virtual Riot and Barely Alive, those people. And I just kind of got into the Launchpad that way by watching like the M4 Sonic videos and stuff. And I'm like, that's cool, because you can just push buttons and it makes noises. So I begged my mom to buy me one, and luckily she did. And then for the 4th grade talent show, I played a little song made entirely of like stock samples from Ableton, like in front of the class. It didn't go anywhere, like I didn't go to the school, but I kept working at it. And then the next year, I performed in front of like 1,000 kids.
Wow,
at my elementary, yeah, in front of the whole school.
That had to be nerve-wracking.
It sucked. My legs were shaking the whole time because I was standing up, you know. And there was this girl that like kept like grabbing my legs the whole time, and I'm just like, stop! I'm trying to focus.
You got the star treatment on your first night out.
It was fun though, and a lot of people were like, "Wow, Chase, you're like really cool," and I'm like, "Thanks, I guess." So
I mean, having fought through the nervous energy of that, it must have felt amazing to get compliments on it and have just an absolute confidence booster in yourself and your talent.
That's what makes it all worth it, really, in the end. When people show appreciation for what you've done, it's the best feeling, dude.
Absolutely. We keep coming up with this topic on each one of the episodes, and absolutely I agree with that, which is why I appreciate so deeply the positive communities that I've found on Discord through doing this.
Yeah.
Like yours, for example. I mean, I've seen nearly no negativity on there at all. It's been absolutely overwhelmingly positive, and it's so beautiful that you managed to put together a community like that. Thank you so much for being out there and doing that for all the people who are a part of it.
Yeah. I don't know. I find it to be fun. And Chloe one day was just like, "Hey, let's start a Discord server." And I'm like, "Why not? I can't say no to that."
It's free, right?
Yeah. And then within 4 months, it's now at 700 members, which is crazy, dude.
Yeah, you've got some definite build-up going on behind there, and that, I mean, it might not reflect in your YouTube followers with only, I think it was, 254 or 284, something like that?
Yeah, around there. I don't know.
But just the fact that you have those people in your community means you do have that support. So that really does, it's got to mean something.
It does. I'm really proud of what we've been able to accomplish in such a short amount of time. And
absolutely, you totally should be.
We've like formed our little project called Versatona, and eventually we're going to post original music with that kind of alias, me and Chloe. So that's fun. Yeah, there's a lot.
So is that going to be essentially like a third attempt at a band type deal?
Yeah. I think it'll work out.
I'm not saying that to make fun of you. I'm saying it because where I want to go with this is going into it, what lessons have you taken away from the failures that you're going to actively try and fix in this new project?
If I were to give advice to someone trying to start a band, I would say make sure you know everything you need to, and the other people in the band know what they need to. Because,
what do you mean by that?
I mean, have the necessary knowledge of maybe writing music and playing music. Because if no one has ever played an instrument and you're like, let's start a band, I don't think that's going to work out.
Well, yeah.
You know? And I also
Except for like a few out there cases.
Right. But I also think that everyone has to be like really willing to do it. Because the main problem with starting the band Vexilia, like I was talking about, is no one really had the motivation to actually do it. And I kept trying. I was like, guys, we need to get together one day and write something. And none of them ever wanted to, I guess. So just make sure that the people you're going to work with are going to be dedicated to the art. And then you'll be fine.
Yeah, you got to make sure that you have that kind of energy going
Right.
into it yourself, and that everybody else is reciprocating it. Otherwise, what's the point?
Mm-hmm.
So that makes sense for sure. And I'll bet there's a few people out there that'll take that to heart and hopefully, kind of implement it in their own projects.
Right.
So what specifically would you say made those projects fail, though?
I'd say the main thing, which kind of leads to every other problem, is time. Because you're in school, or I was in school, and all my friends were in school, and there wasn't just enough time to really do much. And no one was really willing to make time for it, like I said. So I think time is the biggest factor. And sometimes even money, because, you eventually you want to play live, and that costs money. You're going to want to buy...
music gear is not cheap.
Yeah, you're going to want to, rent a studio to record an album. That costs money. So I think having time, money, and the right people to work with are the most three important things.
That's smart.
Three most important
things
I can talk to them.
Where you're at right now, what do you want to do with yourself? I mean, you're still pretty young, and like we were talking about off record, I would say that you're not anywhere near your peak as far as music goes. So 5-10 years down the line, where would you like to see yourself with this?
I'd like to be able to make a living off of it. That's kind of the main goal with all of this, is to one day just be able to make music with people and for people, and then just sell that, and then that's how I live,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's
the dream
best.
For anybody with a creative spark, is to make their living utilizing it and flexing it and getting it stronger and better.
Right.
So now you say making music for people. Do you mean like original tracks for people's projects of their own, or do you just mean like producing a song with a certain intent to reach a certain type of person?
I'd say both. I've always wanted to score a movie or do the music for a video game, so hopefully that happens one day.
Oh yeah, big dreams. That is awesome. Man, I could totally see Vixilia being in like an RPG game for sure.
Yeah, that'd be super cool, dude. One day, hopefully.
100%. It fits that exact genre. It's so beautiful.
Thanks.
And I keep coming back to that one, but man, Jesus, that is such an accomplishment. Good for you.
Thanks. So a lot of my friends tell me, they're like, your music would be really good for movies and video games. I'm like, that sounds really fun. And I've tried multiple times, but no one's really accepted me. And I'm not sure why, because it's probably just because it's not the style they're looking for.
Now, hold on. By tried, what do you mean? Have you specifically gone out to contact studios and get yourself out there? Or have you just kind of put the word out in your own content generation and hoped that somebody would get back to you?
Well, there was a point where me and a few friends tried to make a video game, and I did a ton of sound design for that. So that was kind of one attempt, but we never ended up finishing it. I've also joined like filmmaking servers on Discord to try and talk to people that way. But so far nothing has really worked. So I'm just going to wait for a few years until maybe a friend of mine is like, hey, I'm going to make this movie or video game or whatever, and you should do the music for it.
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, there's a philosophy there of, improve yourself and the opportunities will come to you when you're ready. Right. But there's also, you miss every shot that you don't try and take.
That's true.
So not pushing yourself out there and trying to get it, you may never come across it just because it wasn't something that, popped up.
Eventually, I'll start trying again. But right now, I'm just more focused on building the audience and building the skills that I need, I guess.
I know that feeling intimately.
You're going through that right now.
Right now, yeah.
We all are. It's just a part of the
first step everybody's got to take.
Right.
Now, in your in your server, how much of your time do you think is accidentally dedicated to focusing on that and taking away from you being able to produce your music? Do you find that ever to be an issue?
No, because I feel like I'm smart with my time. So if I don't have any ideas or any like need to work on something, I won't, and I'll just kind of hang out. But the second I have an idea, I'll go and I'll write it down if I'm away from the computer. But if I'm like in my studio and I have all the instruments around me that I need to make it happen, I'll just make it happen. Like, I don't care if I'm in a call with friends. I've told everyone, I'm sorry if I suddenly leave, but it's because I've had like a crazy idea and I need to go work on it.
You've got to muse. You've got to do it.
That's how I work.
That's beautiful. I mean, that's a good way to look at it. You let your art take priority, and that's nice because you're not letting it fall to the wayside because you feel like you have some responsibility.
Yeah, and if they're good people, they'll respect that, and
they will. Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you've explained it to them. I mean, anybody who tells you no, don't be creative, sit here and talk to me, is just out of their mind. There's no reason for that.
I agree.
So. Now that you've seen what I would call, a moderate success, has that managed to make you any money? I mean, do you put anything out there in your videos, in your content, on your community that supports you at all?
Not really. I've had like a few album sales, and streams on Spotify will generate some income, and like downloads
links
on
in the
iTunes.
Description.
Yeah, go check it out.
That will all be there.
But the problem is it's not a lot, so you'd have to have like a really big fan base to make it work. But I'm also planning on selling merch for when I drop my album, and I hope that will do good, I guess.
Well, I mean, I've got so many different talented artists close by me, and absolutely, when you go to the point of dropping merch, consider talking to one of them, because there's so many different styles represented here, and you might be able to find somebody who's just exactly perfect for what you're trying to do.
Maybe I will.
And I don't make anything off of that. I'm plugging these guys. I'm not.
Right.
I'm not involved in the money process. So just in case anybody thinks that I'm trying to make some cash off of this, I don't.
Nah, you're just a good citizen.
I wouldn't say that, but
anyways, back to the
now,
conversation.
What all instruments do you play? And what would you say is your main talent or focus?
Ooh, I would say the two biggest instruments that I started out with were piano and guitar. I think piano is the best instrument to learn, like, period. Even if, like, you think, I want to learn saxophone, or I want to learn trumpet, or I want to learn harp, or whatever, I tell them, learn piano first, and learn music theory. Because once you know how a piano works, and how music is written, and how music works itself, then you can learn any instrument really fast. And that's what I did.
That's smart. That's a really good pointer for people who are up and coming.
So I learned piano over like the course of a couple of years, just on my own time. I didn't have a teacher because I don't like that. That's not my style of learning. But I just like learned a ton of music theory, like how to work in scales and how to write chord progressions and all that. And then I got 2 guitars for my birthday. And since then I've been dabbling in other stuff. Like I have a ukulele and I have a mandolin and I have this cute little harp thing. So I do a little bit of
like one of those little cherub baby angel hearts or harps?
It's called a lyre harp. It's kind of hard to describe what it looks like, but it's got 7 strings on it, and you just tune the strings and then play it. It's really cool.
Super cool.
I've used it before. I've recorded with it, which the music you haven't heard yet, but it's coming. Soon.
I'm gonna go through everything when you're dropping it, man. You have found a lifelong fan.
Yeah, speaking of that, in case anyone doesn't know, I have an album called Evergreen that I'm releasing hopefully within like the next 2 or 3 weeks. It should be done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So I think what we'll do for that is on this episode, I'll go ahead and go back and put it down in the description. So when it first releases, it won't be there. But by the time it's actually out, anybody who listens to this, check the album out down in the description box.
Yeah. Cool.
Now, I love the idea of getting myself out there and just working together with other people, the cooperative working, because I personally do all of my best work when I have somebody who I can bounce ideas off of and come up with a point and then explain to them why it's a good point. That's how I do my best work. Right. As a musician, do you find anything like that, or do you do your best work by yourself?
I think it depends, because sometimes there are people who have a very different vision for the project. And sometimes it's kind of selfish, but I feel that people get in the way of my ideas, and that's when I don't want to collaborate with them anymore, is if they're not willing to make a compromise for what we both kind of want to do. But if there's someone that I can just kind of effortlessly work with, like Chloe, then that just works. You know, it depends on the person. But usually, I like to write music by myself, and I'll talk to people to do vocals and stuff. But other than that, it's just me in a chair, you know, doing my thing.
It's so beautifully said the way you put it just now.
Just me in a chair with this monitor and dusty keyboard in front of me. And that's it. But that's...
Now, how do you contact people to do things like your vocals, for example? Is that something that you source out of your own community Discord, or is that something that you go to people who you admire and you see if maybe they'll do it with you?
I think hopefully one day the second option will happen, but in terms of right now, like every single one of my vocalists that are on Evergreen, because I think there's like 7 or 8 singers on that whole album. They're all in my Discord server, and
nice.
We
so
have
it's a
auditions.
Community project in some ways.
We have like auditions for vocal tiers because there's like copper, bronze, silver, gold, ruby, and diamond, depending on kind of how experienced you are with your voice. And so I'll be the judge of those sometimes, and I'll just find someone that I think has a really nice sounding voice, and I'll just hit them up. I'll be like, "Hey, let's do a song," and they'll be like, "Sure." And then it just happens, I guess.
That sounds so low energy.
I know.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes people are really excited to do it, which makes me like feel really good. When they're like, "I would be honored to work with you." I'm like, "Oh, you don't have to say that. I'd be honored to work with you, you know?"
I'm nobody. I don't know what you're asking or saying that for. I'm just a dude.
But it's nice, I guess.
Yeah, I don't doubt that at all. I mean, there's got to be quite a bit of appreciation for your own personal creative arts there in your community, as well as, you know, just the fact that you grab people who maybe they might not have even considered being on top of a record like that,
right,
and you gave them the opportunity to do it. That's really uplifting and fantastic to see somebody doing.
Yeah. Because, like, if someone ever came to me and said, "Hey, want to, like, do a guitar solo on my album," I'd be like, "Heck yeah! That sounds awesome. I totally want to do that." You know? So I just try to see it from the point of view of them and how, like, they would react if I suddenly came to them and said, "Hey." So, yeah.
Yeah, make sure you're seeing it from the other perspective. That's a good way to do it, for sure. Keep you a little bit humble. I'm sure there's some points, you know, having the following that you do, you get like a little bit of ego, so I can imagine that's got to be a healthy way to look at it.
I try not to get an ego, but
that's hard to do.
it is really hard, because when people like praise your art, on one hand, I'm like, "Stop, you're making me uncomfortable," and on the other hand, I'm like, "Thanks, yeah, I really am fantastic." I don't like to think that way, but I think it's just natural. You know?
It is, for sure. And it's not a bad thing. I mean, it's only bad if you let it go unchecked and you don't feel like you're pushing yourself. If you get to a point of contentment and your ego is skyrocketing and unbalancing you, then yeah, it's bad. But I think where you're at, you deserve to feel that way.
Right. I would say, it's bad when you're not improving at all, because you already think that you know everything you need to and that you're the best.
100%, yeah.
Like, if I ever got to that point, I would just stop for a while and then rewire myself to think, no, there's way more I can learn. So always be
go
willing
do
to
something
learn
difficult for a week or so. Go
Right.
live in the woods with no camping kit.
And then come back and be grateful for everything that you have.
Exactly, yeah.
So
I mean, genuinely, that's not a bad way to do it. I've heard people from all sorts of different backgrounds say that, I mean, they go out and they do something hard, or they live life a little bit differently, and then they come back reinvigorated and more inspired from the things that they did and bring that to their art.
Right, yeah. That's what happens to me when I go camping.
Yeah, but do you go luxury camping, or do you go camping?
Depends. I sometimes go camping with my friends that are in my neighborhood, and that's not a luxury at all, because we just kind of go out there and we're like, all right, let's survive. We have some tents and some food, but that's about it. We got to make our own fun, no electronics, and you just go and do it.
Yeah,
and
those
trips are really inspiring. Yeah, even
no doubt.
I went camping last weekend, and I came up with the idea of a song, and I had the whole thing planned out in my mind by the end of that trip. And I came home, and I immediately just wrote the whole thing in one night. It was crazy. And now
that brings up another question then.
Yeah.
On the topic of this, you've mentioned how when something inspires you, you get right to it and you try and get that out there, or not sent out to the world, but you try and get the idea down and physical or melodic, whatever your workflow is. How do you deal with that when you're on one of these trips and you go camping? I mean, do you ever feel like you might come up with something inspired and accidentally lose it in translation by the time you get back to record it?
What I usually do in a time like that is, if I'm not able to immediately write down a little idea I have, I'll just build on that idea in my head. So if it's a chord progression or a certain sound or a vibe I want to go for, then I think, okay, well, I have this. What else can work with this? And I'll just sit there for an hour. I wouldn't call it fantasizing about the song, but that's what it is, really.
Just kind of mulling it over in your head and building onto it as you go.
Right. I'll come up with a song title or some lyrics or something. A lot of the times, songs start with a song title. I'll hear a word or a combination of words that I think sounds really cool, and then those will evoke images in my head, and then I can translate what the images sound like to the music. I guess that's kind of how I create things.
That's neat to get an inside look on that, because I'm completely removed from that experience. I have no musical talent as far as creation goes. So it's really interesting to hear your point of view on it.
Cool.
On as far as the building blocks go, do you do any actual physical writing for your music? Do you write out sheet music essentially?
Usually no, because let's say I'm writing a song that needs a guitar part, I'll just pick up my guitar and I'll mess around for a while until I find something that I think sounds good, and then I'll just record it, and then that's it. Usually coming up with melodies and harmonies comes from just screwing around on an instrument. I rarely ever compose a whole song on paper and then produce it. It happens at the same time.
So you just kind of jam out until you get something that you feel can become a bigger project.
Yeah, or sometimes, for writing Vexilia, I didn't think it would be that long, but every time I would finish a section, and I'm thinking, okay, I might be able to end it here, I would immediately come up with an idea of something that could go after it, and then I'm like, well, I might as well just do this, And I could have kept that going, But I'm like, okay, if I go over 10 minutes, then I don't think that's going to be very accessible for a lot of people. So I'll just end it
Now,
here.
do you feel like that limits you at all in a creative capacity, feeling like you have to cater to somebody's attention span?
Sometimes. I mean, at the end of the day, you still want to do what you like to do, but it's unrealistic to say you'll get famous by doing only what you want to do, or something like that. I think it's good to notice what your audience enjoys and what they don't, and sort of cater to that. Don't fully give in and just become their musical slave, but I think it's good to be aware,
I would say on that note, it's not like you don't see in, just as an example, do you know the producer Feed Me?
I do. I've heard some
So
of his
Feed
stuff.
Me started out as Spore, and Spore was drum and bass, and he decided that he didn't want to produce drum and bass and something else as Spore, so he became Feed Me, and he produced another genre. So there's something that you can do in music as just a different label. You can just call yourself something else and put out a different type of genre.
That's true. So
I wouldn't say that it limits you so much to exactly what you can do, but maybe it limits you to what you can do as a certain persona.
Right. But I don't care about that too much, because at the end of the day, I end up making a lot of different kinds of music and putting them under the name Chase Dunkley anyways, because I think if I had some kind of stage name, that it would be easier for people to tie that with a certain style, and that's not what I want at all. I just want to make...
That does make sense, yeah. No, instead of doing it as a persona and a stage name, as you said, you do it as an individual and you just put all your art out there. That's a good way to look at it.
It's less of this is a project of mine for this certain genre, and more just this is me, Hi. I guess.
That's really cool. I like that you have that thought process.
Me too.
Now, when you do put something out, how often do you feel like it's going to be successful and then it doesn't really go anywhere?
I never try to set expectations for how a song is going to do, so I always end up getting surprised. That's the plan. I always...
If you have low expectations, you don't have to deal with big disappointments, I suppose.
Exactly, yeah. And that's another thing with the whole ego, I'm super good at everything. Because if you do think like that, and then you release it, and then no one likes it, then it's oh. Which can be a good thing sometimes, if you're in that state and you need something to pull you out of it. That's nice.
And there are always lessons to be learned in failure, and disappointment's just a form of failure.
Mm-hmm. So,
which isn't to say negative at all. I mean, everybody falls, so it's nice to be able to accept that and get up and do it again and see if you can build on it.
It's weird to say, but I kind of like to fail and mess up, because that's how you learn, and that's how you improve. It's just by trying until you finally get it life.
Right. Trial by fire.
Jeez.
Hey, it's the best way to do it. You learn quickly.
Right. Fail early and fail often. Because the earlier you fail, the more you learn at the very start, and then you won't have to face those problems later, and then they become huge problems. You know what I mean? Just deal with it now, and then you won't have to deal with it later.
I mean, imagine the devastation of somebody from you used to see it all the time. It's not so prevalent now in the digital age, but there would be one-hit wonders where they make one song and it gets on the radio and everybody loves it, and then nothing else goes anywhere. Right. Nowadays, with the nature of content generation and the accessibility for anybody to be able to put things out there, I don't see that as such a prevalent thing. But I can only imagine that would devastate an artist to have one thing that people love and then be known for that and expected for that, and not be able to break from that personal mold.
Yeah, that would suck. I mean, at first, if I released a song that suddenly got really huge, I'd be like, whoa, this is super cool. Let me ride this wave of hype and release something else, and then that something else flops. Then I'm like, oh, shoot.
Well,
this is my worst nightmare. Yeah. But yeah, that would just be like the most... that would suck so bad.
What would you say has been the high point of your experience so far? Like, what's something that you're truly proud of that you've been able to experience just through what you're doing in your community and your content generation?
I would say right now is the peak of everything, because I have this relatively large Discord server.
Massive, in my opinion.
And I have merch planned, and I have a lot of people on this album, and a lot of people psyched for this album. And so I'm just ready to drop it and see what happens, you know?
That's awesome. That's really cool that you're in a like really positive groove right now.
Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden I get this DM from this random guy, and he's like, hey, come be on my podcast. And I'm like,
hold on. You can blame Chloe for that. I'll show you screenshots. She directly was like, hey, you got to talk to him.
Well, I thank her because this is great.
Yeah, I usually, in what I do, I try not to go straight to people in the head of communities, because I'm sure that you get spammed from all sorts of different people.
Oh, yeah.
It's just got to be a mess. And yeah, I can imagine that's got to be annoying. So I hope that I get noticed through what I'm doing, and people see that I'm really trying to do something positive, and they kind of want to work with me because of that.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and I want to promote that. So I will.
It means the world to me. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to see how this does on your server. I'm really excited to see what the podcast is like for your personal community. And I'm really hoping that with you doing this, that we have a few of the more, up and coming guys. I wouldn't say that you're not up and coming, but you do have a following. You do have a community. And I'd like to involve some people who don't have those types of things, so that they can maybe have that type of opportunity later on,
Yeah. That's super cool, dude. I wish I was that, like, I don't know what the word is. That generous, or that willing to just help other people out. I want to be like that. I'm working towards that.
I would say that you do have it in your own way, with the way that you produce your music. You put out something that somebody can feel. You put out something that is your expression, and other people, I mean, music just has a way of getting to you, when you feel that chill up your spine from just a chord progression, and it doesn't make any sense, but you relate to it on a deep level, so you do have that. You just aren't doing it the same way I am, I would say, and I'm almost jealous, because I could never do it the way you do, and it just blows my mind when I get to actually have a conversation with somebody and see their work. And that's I'm just going to keep going back to it, man. Vixilia is beautiful, gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And it's crazy that when I talk to you, I don't want to say a normal dude in a bad way, but you're a really cool dude. You're somebody that I can have a conversation with, and we had a conversation for a good long while before doing the recording. So it just blows my mind to see those two different things there.
That's super cool to me.
It's amazing.
Sometimes too.
It's amazing.
Because there's this band I'm really into called Aviana. I don't know if you've heard of them. Probably not. But they're really like, I wouldn't call them a really small band, but they're pretty underground. They don't have a huge following. And one of the things I love about that is that you're able to talk to them so easily.
I do like how up-and-coming people and underground artists are definitely more, open. They're just more accessible.
Because, suddenly, if you blow up, then not everyone is going to be able to talk to you. And that's kind of one of the downsides of blowing up, I guess. It's just not being able to talk to you. I wouldn't say that it's on the person necessarily, but we were just saying, it's got to be a flood of people who have either kind words or criticisms or whatever, but it's a massive flood of people, so it's understandable that they can't get back to everyone. Right. But occasionally I'll just talk to the guitarist of that band, and he's super nice, So that's awesome. And like, especially when you look up to those people a lot, and then you realize these are actually people. You know, I don't have to kind of put them into this view as like this like legend. Or
that's where I was trying to get with my thought earlier of like seeing the artist and the person. So yeah, exactly that. It is crazy to see like somebody who produces something that you really gel with, and then you're like, oh man, this guy's just a dude.
It's just a dude in his basement with a computer.
Wherever it is, who cares? Sometimes it's somebody just on the beach recording little songs, you know?
Dude, that'd be awesome.
Do it. Get out there and do it.
I just don't live near any beaches, man. I'm like in the middle of the country.
Me
which
too.
Sucks. But I don't know.
So how do you feel your location plays into your success, if at all? Do you think being in the middle of the country limits you or gives you opportunities that you wouldn't have otherwise?
So I guess, I don't know. That's a tough question. Good job.
I appreciate it.
You've stumped me. It has its advantages.
If you think about it, show business happens, over on the East and West Coast.
Right.
New York and LA. Those are the places.
Those are the huge ones.
So I would imagine that you would be able to more readily jump into like open mic shows and things like that in those places. But being in where you are, I can imagine that there's probably a stronger online community for these areas because it doesn't have such real life access.
Yeah. Most of my friends aren't into what I do. Most of my family, I mean, they're supportive, of course, but it's not like any of them really enjoy it. So that's where you just turn to the internet and say, hey, instead of me trying to promote to these like 50,000 people in my small little town, let me open the doors to like millions, like hundreds of millions. Yeah. And just say, hey, this is my little thing that I made. Check it out, And
that's, I would say, as far as opening the door to those people, that's one of the most beautiful things in my eyes as far as art and music goes, because those things transcend language. It doesn't matter if you speak Spanish, I speak English. If I show you a picture that I drew that I'm really, really passionate about and you enjoy it, you're going to enjoy it, regardless of whether or not we can actually have a conversation.
There was a guy, I forgot what his name was, but he's like an animation YouTuber, and he talked about this thing where with drawing, like you can draw and anyone will be able to understand what you draw. Like if you say the word apple in English to a ton of different people from around the world, like not everyone is going to know what you're talking about, but once you draw an apple, everyone knows what you're talking about. So
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Like art is like the universal language. A lot of people say that.
And music. And I would say beatboxing in a lot of cases, because it doesn't matter where you're from. If somebody does a lip roll and you know what a lip roll is, you've heard it. That's not something you hear out in the wild.
Right. I spotted a lip roll out in the wild. It's a weird sentence.
I really don't think a lot for this. I just kind of say.
I hope people know what a lip roll is.
Hey, even if they don't, maybe they'll look it up.
Yeah. Google what a lip roll is.
If it
sounds bad,
maybe YouTube it.
Yeah. Don't. I wouldn't Google it. It doesn't sound like the best term to Google. But it's not it's not bad, I promise. It's fine. It's just a beatboxing
technique. Yeah, it's just a way to make a bass noise that you generally wouldn't be able to. And sorry, I didn't mean to bring beatboxing up. You did it earlier.
It's fine,
I was thinking about it. You got me in this hole.
I mean, beatboxing is the first musical thing I ever really did. So,
I'm convinced it's the first musical thing anybody does, whether or not they want to call it that. Just making noises by yourself is
right. Or just being in class and tapping on a desk.
Yeah, anything like that. I mean, just getting the percussion out there, just learning to make some noises and making melodies just by yourself with no instruments and no additives. I would say everybody does that.
And those are like the really tiny things that eventually lead up to buying a guitar or buying a drum set, or learning to sing. It's just those those really little things, but they all eventually lead up to something, you know? And I think those things are necessary to mess around with when you're really young, so you can get a feel of whether you like it or not. A lot of people say, well, it's really tough for me to learn music. I'm like, well, what have you been doing your whole life? And they've never done anything musical. And I'm like, well, that's the problem, is because you haven't developed that kind of mentality yet. And you need to,
or the
if you want to get
sense
into
of
it.
what sounds good. I mean, if
Exactly.
you've never tried to make anything, you're not going to know what's good, and so it's going to be
Mhm.
difficult. That's just that's the game. That's starting out.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter what you're doing.
So I tell people, if you want to get into doing music, think about why you want to do it and how you're going to go about doing it, and then learn from that, I guess.
That's good words of advice for sure.
Thanks.
All right. I believe we are currently at the 53-minute mark, or 48, something like that.
Dang,
so,
dude.
Yeah, it happens quick, right? When you're having a good conversation, the time just flies. And on that note, I'd like to say thank you for being a part of this once again. And it has been a really good conversation. And I do deeply appreciate your willingness to take part in something that's not going to benefit you at all at the moment. I mean, I hope that down the road, if somebody listens to this, they go and they buy your album, or they check your music out and they subscribe to your YouTube channel. But I can't guarantee anything like that. And if I did, I'd be a liar. So it means a lot to me.
Yeah, it's totally fine. I come and do things like this because I enjoy it, and it puts me in a good mood, you know?
I'm glad to hear it. Thank you, and I'm so happy that we've had such a good time doing this, and I hope to do another one. And on that note, are there any final words that you would give to anybody starting up just at the very beginning? I know we've covered a couple, but it's kind of like a ritual that I want to start up. Anything that you would say just to somebody who's absolutely new to it, doesn't have any experience, maybe looking to find out the fundamentals?
I don't know if I have one tip, but I can give like a short little step-by-step guideline. I would, first, before you ever try to create anything, listen to as much music as you can, and listen to as many different kinds of music as you can, because you never know when you'll find something that you really, really like, and you're like, I want to create that kind of music, and that gives you a starting point. So just listen to a ton of stuff, figure out what you like and why you like it, and don't copy what you hear, but the whole point of creation is to take inspirations and ideas from a lot of different things. That's when something original comes out, is instead of just blending a strawberry and an orange, like everyone's done before in a shake, you take a strawberry and orange and then all these 50 other fruits that you put in there as well. And that's something that no one has ever done before, So you take little bits and pieces of stuff you like and just figure out how that works, figure out how you're going to do that in your own unique style.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And on that, we're going to go ahead and close it.